Great. Hi, I'm Debbie Atuk. I'm a Bering Straits Native Corporation shareholder and a member of the board of directors. You may remember a series of interviews that I did in 2020 exploring the opportunities and challenges of economic development in Alaska, focused primarily on rural Alaska. So much has changed since then. We have millions of federal dollars that have been allocated to Alaska, and I'm really interested in tracking what projects are getting funded and whether that's going to bring opportunities to Alaskan Native businesses. So we're reviving these conversations. Today, my guest is Lisa Marie Ikonomov, a member of the Tlingit and Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska and the Douglas Indian Association. She's served on the board of Gold Belt since 2016. And she's the president of Ikonic, Inc., a public relations firm that she founded in 2018. Lisa Marie has held leadership positions at several Alaska-based organizations where she has led corporate communications, shareholder services, and public relations. Welcome, Lisa Marie.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Well, it's been so much fun to be able to catch up with you to talk about this project. I'm going to switch to the, I guess I'll get cut out of the video. I wanted to start out with when we first got to know each other, we talked about how we both left Alaska to go to college, and we both had started our careers outside. So I was wondering if you would just start there and talk about what made you decide to come back to Alaska, because you had built an impressive career in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I had spent quite a bit of time in the entertainment business. And when I decided to come back to Alaska, I was actually working for ABC Television, the network in Burbank. And it really was the dream job. I never thought I would leave it. I was in the marketing group working specifically in on-air promotions. And, I used to have these moments where I drive onto the studio lot. It was the Walt Disney Studio lot. I'd drive through security and flash my ID card, and I'd see the ABC logo, and I'm driving through in my red Mustang. I would think to myself, my gosh, I'm just a girl from Alaska. How did I get here? This is the dream. I never thought I would leave it. I had just incredible, people that I worked with. It was just so fast, and everything was so, awesome. And it was just great to be a part of the mainstream. But then really, truly, one day something switched inside of me. It was all I can say. It was like a light switch. And I just wanted to come home, which is really bizarre because I had spent my entire childhood wanting to leave. Growing up in Juneau, it's landlocked, and I always felt kind of stuck. And so I got out, lived the dream, did exactly what I had always worked for when I was young. But there was just something inside of me. And all I wanted to do was be home. All I wanted to do was serve my community and my people. And I wanted to be by my family and the foods and the smells and, the sounds and all the things that I grew up with. And it was so strong that I came home, and no regrets at all. My sister, she has this joke that she used to always say to me where, Alaska is like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave.
Yeah.
And I never understood that because I'm like, I'm gone. But really, truly, it was the right thing to do, coming back home, no regrets. Now I don't want to leave. I really love it here. And, but it was really just, I think, a desire to give back and to serve. When you're working in an industry like entertainment, as great and wonderful as people are, and as awesome as the job is, at the end, when you're done, you can leave, and really, truly, what impact have you made? There's always somebody ready to step up and take that. And, when you come back home and you work for your own people, you really, truly can make a difference. You can see in the lives of the people that you're working for and you're supporting and you're helping. And so it's, I think, just something that's inherent in us.
I can definitely relate to that feeling of needing to go home. And I haven't been able to do it consistently, but I have been able to go back on a regular basis by serving on a board like you. Although you live in Alaska, what motivated you? How did you decide to run for the Gold Belt board?
Well, I actually worked for my corporation Gold Belt. I oversaw the corporate communications and the shareholder services department, and I really loved it. It was the most fulfilling, I think, job I've ever had. I loved connecting with our people. I loved working for them, serving them. And there were a lot of things that were happening back then with our board. We had a legacy board. That's the best way to describe it. Many people who had served, been on that board for 20 years. A lot of people who really had been serving when our corporations were in the infancy stages and were still there. That was really a different generation than we see now serving on our boards. There really has been this huge generational handoff that has been very interesting to be a part of and to also watch. But when I was an employee, there was a lot of bad behaviors that I think were legacy behaviors that I really wanted to stand up against. Things like directors coming in and saying, you need to fire this person. Not because of job performance, not because that person did anything wrong, but because maybe they were related to someone on the board who was on a different political issue than them. Or maybe because their britches got a little bit too big and they got a little full of themselves and they felt powerful, and there weren't policies and things in place that really could knock that down, because there was almost this mentality of, well, they're on the board of directors. So, I saw management in very difficult situations where they're between a rock and a hard place on those. And so really, truly, a couple directors came after me and they came after my job. And my mom had been serving on the Gold Belt board for about 20 years. And her and I talked a lot about this, but she had some serious health issues and had decided it was time for her to retire from the board. Native politics can be very stressful and they can take a huge toll. And when you're fighting cancer and you lost your husband, that toll is even worse, which is where my mom was. And I was literally sitting at my desk one day, very stressed out because of a lot of the bad behaviors of some of these board members, trying to take away work, trying to get, me to lose my job, different things like that. And all of a sudden it was like this little voice in my head just spoke up. And all of a sudden I heard those words, run for the board. And I knew that's where I could actually make a positive difference. And so I did. I ran, got elected, was the high vote getter. And that was really starting this journey of, really advocating for change and professionalism and different policies that we have in place now on our board that weren't there when I was an employee, 10 years ago. Right. And so that has been such, I think, a great accomplishment. And I didn't do it alone, of course. I mean, you have to have your majority, but of other board members wanted to see that kind of change. And so now our board is not very recognizable compared to what it was when I first started serving 7 years ago. But yeah, that was the motivation, is really wanting to, make a difference and see change that's going to affect my corporation Gold Belt and be positive for all of our employees and for our shareholders.
I think that is really incredible. Starting as an employee and moving on to the board. I have the experience of being not an employee and actually living outside and having to build a story that made sense. Even though I knew intuitively that I wanted to serve, I had to build a story that was genuine and that people would, that I could back up. And I feel like that I've done that. But having the insider's point of view, my dad talks about the difference between being on the board and serving as an employee. So he has seen the pros and cons. I want to switch gears a little bit, because one of the things that we both have in common is we serve on the board of our ANCs, and like many other ANCs, both of ours have generate some revenue from government contracting. And we were talking offline before we got ready for this about this recent ruling in Tennessee. And it's so recent that I don't really know that much about it, but it seems like you've been, you're a little bit more up on it than I have. What do you think the threat is, or the perception of a threat that this ruling has for the 8A set-asides for ANCs?
Well, that really stems originally from the Supreme Court ruling about affirmative action, where they said you can't use race in deciding admissions. And that has really sort of trailed over now to the federal marketplace in terms of the ruling in Tennessee that basically said you have to, organizations that get the disadvantaged business benefits have to basically demonstrate that they're disadvantaged. So previously, it used to be your minority, your woman, your native owned, your veteran owned. That was sufficient. Now, what the court was saying is that you have to demonstrate what that disadvantage is. And so that has actually really kind of put a pause on even getting new 8A corporations or companies approved, because they have to demonstrate that. There is a serious threat. I've heard two sides of it, where some aren't as concerned. They think that, establishing that narrative and demonstrating what the disadvantage is going to be sufficient. There's others that think, hey, this could actually be taken to a higher court, and that disadvantaged benefit is going to go away completely. And so we don't quite know or really truly understand the threat 100% right now, but I know that a lot of organizations and corporations are tracking it. Tribes are tracking it too, other minority-owned businesses, because this could have a huge impact in the federal marketplace. The biggest threat is, and I am by no means an expert, but the biggest threat really truly is when you look at us as Alaska Native corporations, how many Alaska Native corporations are super dependent on federal contracting for the majority of their revenue.
Right.
And that is a risk. And if you look back at the history of Alaska Native corporations, even going so far back as the NOLs that happened back in, I believe it was the 80s and the 90s, that was a special benefit that Native corporations were able to benefit from. And that actually kept a lot of corporations, I believe, out of bankruptcy or shutting its doors. Well, the federal contracting has kind of done the same thing. It's given Native corporations really that extra hand in the federal marketplace, having businesses generating huge amounts of revenue. I once knew the number of how much it was, but I can't think of it right now. But it's significant. And so if that is taken away from us, where are we going to be? Especially corporations, village corporations. I think the urban and regionals are pretty set, but that may be starting their journey in the federal marketplace. That's going to be a much steeper hill to climb for them. So if this goes away, where does that leave us as Native corporations? That is a huge conversation, and that's a huge risk for all of our corporations, I think. And this also goes back to something that I know I've been saying for several years on my board, is really truly we have to diversify. We have to look at diversification beyond federal government. And my whole platform has always been, let's build Alaska. Let's diversify in Alaska.
Yes, exactly.
Which is super important. The challenge with that is when you start looking at different businesses in Alaska, what are the needs? And if you can even start those businesses, what are the margins? I know there's a lot of village corporations that will do things like they'll have a store, or they'll have a gas station in their village. Those provide resources, and those fill needs in those communities, important needs. But can the margins of those businesses, which are really small businesses, sustain an entire corporation?
And how much can they grow, right? This is something that I think about frequently, which is, yes, villages have some economy because they have the village store, they have a fuel business typically, there'll be a couple of small businesses like that. And then there's like a certain amount of money that I believe circulates, right? And then some money is sent outside because they order in. How do we attract more revenue to rural Alaska? And some places like in the Southeast, where you have an abundance of ships that can come into port and can visit your community, you can build up tourism. So that's something that is a natural way to think about diversifying. And for some of the more harder to reach communities, they might still be able to benefit from tourism, but they might need to partner with, I don't know, like private equity partners who are willing to help them develop some of these like bougie camping, hunting guided trips, right? Which are like really super high end, where people can go off and have like remote experiences. And then with the influx of all of this tribal broadband, people would be able to be connected for other businesses. They could potentially build online businesses, and then it won't matter where their money is coming from because they can serve clients from all over, right? But I'm with you. The threat to ANCs it's been pretty constant since I started to follow the topic, which was probably around 2012, I think, is when I started really paying attention. And I think Claire McCaskill was at that time, she was Senator of Missouri, and she was going after a set-asides for these larger ANCs, saying these are no longer small businesses. She's not in the legislature anymore, but she has plenty of former staffers that are still on the Hill. And this is how I think about this as a potential threat. And that is this: if I'm a young, middle-aged to young staffer, and I want to give my boss a win, I can say, hey, you know what we can go after? We can go after these ANCs that claim to be small businesses. It's an easy win for them because the boogeyman is going to be somebody that is not in their district, right? It's not nobody in their district that will be harmed. They're going to sell it as a benefit to their voter. So I've long been worried about that since Claire McCaskill. So I'm all about looking for other ways to generate revenue. And I think there's some exciting things happening around the state. We have a lot of infrastructure going on. We still have funds available under the BIL, which I can't remember what that acronym stands for right now. We have the Inflation Reduction Act. So I'm anticipating that we will have some more significant development going on for many years to come. I think we're getting close to the end of our 20 minutes. I wanted to talk a little bit about the future. These ANCs have already been around for 50 years. And I think about that and I'm like, how did that happen? Is our corporation where, like, one of my great uncles served on our first board for Bering Straits Native Corporation. And I think, would he recognize this? Is this what he expected? Are we doing what they wanted us to do? And what do we want next? You know, where do you hope to see Gold Belt in the next 50 years?
Oh, that's such a great question. And, you know, as a director and a shareholder and a mother to two young shareholders, it's something that I think a lot about. You know, we're so unique as Alaska Native corporations. We're not like regular for-profit corporations that are make as much money as you can, and then if you die and sell off piece by piece, it's okay. We have the responsibility to be here forever. We have to think about not just one generation out, but 5 generations out. How are we going to still be here? In regard to the business side, I honestly don't know, because the business changes all the time. I mean, 30 years ago, nobody heard of government contracting, and now it's our meat and potatoes. And so who knows what's going to come next. But one of the things that at Gold Belt that we've done, our board has made a huge commitment to building our trusts. And, you know, right now the corporation is very, very successful. We're doing really well. We're making sure we have the ability to invest in new businesses, work on that diversification, continue to grow. But really, truly, it's about building our trusts to be here forever, so that they can, even when you have a very poor business climate, those trusts can still pay benefits. They can still pay scholarships. They can still provide, you know, funeral benefits to shareholders. And so that's really been a focus of ours right now. And it's our trust. We started an ancestral trust, gosh, I think it's probably about 9 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago, it might be coming up on. And when we first started that trust, the initial estimate was it would take, I believe, almost 100 years at the rate we were contributing to start paying benefits. And, you know, now we have been able to grow that trust so much that we may only be a handful of years before we can actually start paying our dividend. I'll have to talk to the president of the trust or our chair of the trust to find out that exact number. But, you know,
that's
making
really exciting.
It's very exciting. And it's been really awesome to be on the board and be a part of seeing that happen. So really, truly, it's it's building that. And we've also taken advantage of the other trusts that were available, the settlement trusts, to start paying benefits through those, tax-free benefits to our shareholders. We recently moved our scholarship program under there and some of the other benefits. And so, you know, when you look at it, that really truly helps maximize more benefits for our shareholders. But yeah, in terms of the business, I don't know. I would think that we'd probably continue in the government contracting, but I'd like to see us just continue to build our footprint in Alaska. You know, COVID was a horrible thing for so many of us, but it also brought in a lot of revenue for, you know, like the tribes. I know my tribe, Tlingit and Haida, has done some incredible things with it. They're really, in a lot of ways, taking over Juneau, it seems. They've bought in a lot of properties, they've expanded services, they've started new businesses. And so for Southeast and that community, it's been really exciting to see them take advantage of those opportunities. Same thing with the Southeast Regional Health Consortium. They've been able to build a new dental clinic. And all of those have been—
I saw that they are breaking ground on that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's very close to where Gold Belt's offices are. So I get to drive by it when I'm in town and have sort of watching it piece by piece grow. But it's been really exciting to see our tribal organizations, you know, our native healthcare organizations, and even our native corporations be able to build on that and provide new services.
Well, I have to say, I am not at all surprised to hear how progressive your region is. I think about the years preceding 1971, right, when the ANCSA Act was officially signed. And I think about the decades of work that people put into establishing the argument to have that act written into law and passed, and like decades and decades of work that the people of Southeast put into it under the Alaska Native Brotherhood and the Alaska Native Sisterhood and the chapters. And I just think your people have had a vision for a very long time about what is right, about maintaining. It's not sovereignty, but it is a sense of ownership and participation. And I just love it. I really value the time that I spent in Juneau getting to know people like you and other leaders from the Southeast, because honestly, you guys are vanguards. So thank you so much for coming and sharing with me the thoughts that you have about what's to come and what might happen next and what we need to be thinking about. It's been really helpful. And I hope other, you know, people who are on other boards, and like we were talking about, some of the village native corporations that might be just starting out or might only be relying on their 7i revenues from things like Red Dog. I hope that they're thinking about ways to develop businesses and taking advantage of opportunities like Spruce Root and some of the other CDFIs that are out there. But thank you so much for taking the time to sit here with me today.
Oh, this was really fun. Thank you so much for inviting me. I had a great time. It went by super fast.
I know, doesn't it go by so fast? I look forward to seeing you very soon, and I want to wish you the best of luck on completing your doctorate.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, thanks. We'll see you soon.
Bye.